I'm CK. Last general purpose kit we had was a little vibrating bug. So today we've got a running micro bug from Whadda. Picked this up from jameco.com. And we'll put it together, see if it's fun, and see if it works a little better than the last one. And I hope you enjoy the video. Oh, here's the box. Running microbug, learn how to solder electronics. It's level 2 in a soldering kit. Let's see what differentiates this one. Follows light, 2 open chassis sub-miniature motors, adjustable light sensitivity, LED eyes indicate direction. That's good because then we can track how much each sensor is picking up, which we couldn't on the last one. Runs on 2 AAA batteries. QR code for build guide, I assume, and a little picture of the parts. I'm going to back this camera off a little bit. There we go. Open it on up. We do have a piece of paper, so we don't need the build guide. Here's the chassis and circuit board. So, got a on-off switch. I'll come back in a little bit. I know I'm jerking the zoom around, sorry. On-off switch, 2 resistors, a diode. It's interesting that they have a polarity protection diode on something like this, but that's fine. Resistors, a couple more transistors, a couple more resistors. I think this is the variable resistors, and this is the red. Yeah, that's the red LEDs that will show you what it's doing. RV1 and RV2, which are the adjustments for sensitivity, variable resistors, and then there are 2 DC motors here. So that's significantly different than the last one. Let's see what we got inside the bag. And the circuit board looks fine. It's low end for this type, as is typical with this kind of kit. And Velamin does this, which I appreciate. They put the resistors, diode, and jumper wires in order of how their build guide tells you to put them on. This is a light sensing diode, I believe. We'll check that in a minute. And we've got our transistors, some heat shrink. Now let's look at these little motors. Come on. Wound motors, DC motors, magnets. It's a nice little motor. It looks like a slot car motor from the 60s, quite frankly. Now let's take this light sensing diode. Everything's getting stuck to the permanent magnets in that. So let's see what we got. If we put, I'm going to check our resistance here. So 6 mega ohms, 1.5 mega ohms. If I cover it up, it goes to 23 mega ohms resistance. If I expose it to light, 1.5 meg. So that's what's going to be guiding this in the directions it wants to go in. So we've got the motor, and it'll come down, and I don't know, these are little knobs that will go into the variable resistors. And we've got some shrink wrap. Oh no, this is really thick wire. Huh. That's like 8 or 6 gauge wire, huh? That's interesting. And our transistors, most of them. 3 of them, there should be 4, there's the 4th. And then a little spacer thingy. And let's look at the sheet of paper that comes with it. Typical Velaman design. Transparent photoresistor switch, transistor. I'm really actually looking at how we mount the little, oh, it's just gonna, what? It's got a roller that'll go here in the back. That's what that white piece of plastic is. That's a roller. And then here, it looks like we kind of mount, we get everything off it, and we mount the motors kind of like this, off to the, at kind of an angle. And then we take this, the wire is this piece of wire is simply here to create a foot for the motor to drive. But I don't think that's going to work really well, because this wire is too thick. Well, it might, to go around that shaft. But that's what it's going to do. And we'll go ahead and put it together. So I'll get the soldering iron heated up and we'll get that started. Okay, first step is to put resistors on, and we'll start with the 400Ks. That's brown, black, brown. Pull them out of the tape. And they go in R1, R2, R4, and R5. So let's put one on. Start at R1. You can leave, as you can see, you can leave about 2 millimeters away from the body before the bend on the lead. And now we'll give it a quick solder to see how solder adheres to this board. Yeah. Again, this is, their boards have some big holes for the leads, and as you can see, the leads are thin, so if you're not careful, you get this, which is, let me zoom in a little bit for a second here. You get a little halo around the lead, and it's not actually climbing up the wire. So you want to be sure that you've got the lead completely enclosed in solder. And that can be a little bit of pain here, as you can see. So that's it for how they go on and what you need to watch out for. I'm going to go ahead and stop or turn the volume down on the commentary and speed up the playback, because there's not much more to say. So enjoy resistor time. That's the resistors. Now they want to put the the photo detectors here. And the long pin is E, the short pin is C, and E goes inward. So we're not gonna, they're trying to see whether it's kind of hard to tell how far out they bend, but I'm just going to drop them in like this and lay them flat against the circuit board. I think that will give us the best kind of light and directional guidance. Gotta find the other one. There it is. And again, E, the long pin, goes towards the center of the unit on both of them. So now it's got its eyes on. And we're going to put the switch. Where's the switch? Switchy switch switch. Goes over here. And I don't think we need to... Golly! I let it slip through my fingers. Go like there. We don't need to do anything to align that because just setting it on the solder pad keeps it in place. Now we'll put all the transistors, and they are not all the same. There are 54 547s and 557s. So you want to make sure there's a 557, and that one will go in T2 with the flat spot aligned with the flat spot on the printed on the circuit board. Here's another 557, and the second one will go in T4, which makes sense. Because as you can probably see here, let me get this on and you'll see, you can consider the board like so, divided in half. This circuit is one complete separate circuit, and this is one complete separate circuit. So if you're placing components, you're going to place them symmetrically. I'll solder these transistors just so they don't come flopping loose while I'm doing other stuff. Now we're going to put the two trimmer resistors on, and they're both the same value because again they're symmetrical circuits. I'll try and put them down without them dropping out too many times as I do this. Yay! I got them in place. And that's the two trimmers. Now we'll put the LED eyes on it. Where does it say? I'm sorry, I'm looking to see. I'm sticking my head in the shot because I'm trying to find where he told us to put the diode on. They don't actually have it listed. Well, let me go through the rest of the stuff first. Oh, that's interesting. The diagram lists the LEDs is slightly different, but we want to just put the long lead in the non-shaded half of the circle and the short lead into the longer lead. I don't know how far out I want to go with this because we don't want the LEDs to interfere with that, but I guess I'll just put them something like that far out, leaving 1/4 inch, 6 millimeters, something like that of lead sticking through the back. That's slipped in a little bit, so they're not even right now. So all I'm going to do is heat that up again, pull it back out with the soldering iron on it, and there we go. Now that's too far out. Come back a little bit. That's close enough. Close enough. If you're doing this for a school project, you'll probably want to measure that. Again, there's not a distance specified, just use your judgment. Now we got two glowy eyes, which is good because it'll tell us, say what I'm probably going to do is I'll start by having a light directly here and trimming these to balance out the LED brightness instead of trying to match the motor rotation. And again, I'm looking for where this diode is installed. I don't see a step where they add that. So I'm just going to put it on now. And it goes down here, and there's a black stripe or bluish stripe which will match the silver stripe on the diode. Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Am I confused? Oh, I am confused. Okay, this is different. The diode ends up being the hub of the rear roller. So they say to check the polarity on the motors at this point, but they do say there's a red dot by the red lead. Geez, I got resistor leads on there. So this will be the red. This will be the red side, where the red dot is. That's the negative. Looking to see if there is not a positive indication. So we'll just go with the red dot. So we've looked at that. Now I'll put the battery holder on. And where did that go? Is it still in the box? Yes, it is still in the box. And we've got a little countersunk head screw to connect this to the board. And I'm just going to attach it lightly right now. Interesting that it's got a countersunk head, but the hole in the battery box is not countersunk. And a little lock washer. Oops, did I drift off? I did. Lock washer on first, and put the nut on the screw, and the lock washer came off, of course. Got to get the wires not constricting. Okay, that's that. Now we're going to connect red wire to that point, black wire to that point, and that means we're going to have to trim these off a good bit. Make a little loop on them. But let me strip off some wire, some insulation. Twist those a little bit. So they don't splay out. And I like to use tweezers to put these through the holes because my fingers are too clumsy to do it well on their own. Oops, and that came a little whiskery. Tweezers on your workbench are a wonderful addition. I have a video on my channel about selecting tweezers and what kind of tweezers you should look for. I'll try to leave a link in the description, but based on my past behavior, I probably won't. Okay, next, this diode, as I said, is the hub for the little rear roller. So I'm going to try and bend this to get the diode kind of centered. And I let the sleeve come off because I wanted to remind myself of this is a little, I think they want it this way. I don't know if they do or not. That's a bad, yeah, this is a bad diagram on here. Let me look at the, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so the here, the way this is shown with the stripe on this side, that's what they really mean, because if you look on the trace on the board, that's ground. You can see this pad has a slight connection to this big ground plane, where this pad is not. Actually, doesn't appear to be connected to anything. So we'll put that on. Kind of snug it up into that little cutout so it rolls. Oh, and we got to solder it from this side. So again, I'm not sure this diode actually is doing anything electrically on this circuit. I think they may have just said, well, we need a hub for this roller. What can we use? What do we have in stock? We've got diodes. Okay, put a diode on there. See, that'll roll just dandy. Next, probably what's going to be the more challenging part, and that's to, okay, what do we, oh, I see what we're doing. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take the two motors, and the first thing we're going to do is, and I'm looking for something, we're going to roughen up the sides. And they show using a file. I'm going to use some rough sandpaper, and I'm going to do it over my floor, not over my workbench. So let me show you the difference between one that I haven't done and one that I have done. You can see bare metal has been exposed under the coating or oxidation that's on there, because we're going to be using these strips, these copper strips, to actually solder the motor into place. So we want to have these roughed up so the solder will adhere to the metal. All right, they're roughed up. Now, we don't really have a good indication of how deep they want this to be. So I'm going to have to guess. And we want them going in a particular way. So with this thing facing this way, we want the positive lead on this one over here. Not that way, that way. And the positive lead on this one towards the back. And I'm going to see how I can figure out how to, see that's, I can't rest them very well because of the eyes I've got here. So I'm going to use some foam that I always have on my workbench. This foam comes from packaging for integrated circuits. Let me do this again so I get it right. Positive on this side, like so. Positive facing back, like so. Let's see if that gives me enough support. Oops. I guess that's going to be okay. They're sticking out. It's really all I really care about. I need some foam to support the back too. I know this is a little fiddly. I'm sliding this forward, and that foam is not thick enough. Let me get another piece to bolster it. Or maybe this one will be thick enough. Yeah, that'll be thick enough. We do want to make sure these are... Golly, this thing is... Yeah, if you're doing this yourself and you're at a certain level of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, maturity, it's just going to be a little bit of a pain. However, if you have one of the youngsters in your lives doing this, you want to be here to help with this, because this is a little fiddly. Again, right now I'm just trying to search for a piece of foam that will provide the distance I want. You do want them kind of parallel. Okay, I think we're good there. I'm looking at the diagram just to be sure that I'm some semblance of what they had in mind. Close enough. Now I'm going to get some somewhat thicker solder and tack these in place to start, being very careful not to nudge them. And keep in mind that the battery case, the motor case here, is pretty thick and pretty large, so it's taking heat away, so you're going to want to probably add a little more solder and a little more heat to get it to adhere. And I'm going to, since the other side's already done, I can lay a good bead down here. That looks good. Hold on, my visor slipped over my eyes, and that's not good. Okay, so the fronts are all good. I'll touch up a little bit more on the back. Okay. The motors are in place pretty securely. I can't move them. Now we're going to run jumpers from these holes to the battery posts, and they've got little lines going to where they're supposed to go. So that's what these 4 jumpers that they left on there. If you don't have jumpers, I mean, obviously you can use a regular old piece of wire. I always think it's cute that Velleman puts the jumpers in with the resistors. I'm gonna take that in there and get my little pointy thing, the slotted end, to guide it to the hole it's supposed to be in. Feed it down a little bit. It's not feeding down, so let me get needle nose and give it a little push. There we go. And there it is poking through. So I'm going to solder the base of all these jumpers as soon as I get them through, just so I don't knock anything loose and frustrate myself. I'll wait on the other end for a minute. Another jumper. I'll put it through. I like putting it through the post first. I think I may be able to do this one without tweezers. Nope. Just going to frustrate myself if I do that. Again, take my little slotted tool. Oops, I'm too far down. Okay, I am going to use the needle nose because I can't see what I'm doing. Okay, that's another one through. And I'll solder so it doesn't scooch out of there and make me grumpy. And let me do the other two. Okay, that's a pain. I think that we should have added the battery box afterwards, after we get these two back leads on. I'm going to send a note to Whadda about that. So I'm pulling this up momentarily, and then I can actually get in to get these leads through these back holes. Now we can put the battery box back on, but it is, again, it's a lot easier if you do step 10, 11, 12 before you do step 8. Step 8, this battery box is really in the way. Now we'll solder the motor connections. Now one thing to be careful of here, because these are bare jumpers, you want to make sure you're not shorting them to each other. It's not very likely up here, but it is certainly a potential down here. Put my support foam back away. And now we're going to take the insulation off this wire. They want it to be about 5 millimeters. I'll go more than 5 millimeters and then trim from there. Or maybe not. Maybe that'll just work the way it is. I think that'll just work the way it is. I had my depth set already. Let me measure this just to be sure. Okay, that's about 6 millimeters with a rough edge, so I'll even it out. Make sure they're both about the same size. even though that really doesn't matter. Now, theoretically, this will slide over this leg, friction fit, and it does. Okay. And that, pending battery installation, is that. So if you look at the schematic, there's no schematic, but if you look at the traces, which are as good as a schematic, the photo is coming into this resistor, jumping over to here, to this pole, this pin on the transistor to tell it what to do, and same thing on the other side. So let me grab, I think I've got some AAAs right under the workbench here. I do. I'm not going to give, oh, I didn't do this because I didn't want to have these on first. But you take the little handles, put them through here so we can trim it up if we need to. Now I want to make sure the battery, the switch is off, and I just had my batteries, and where did I put them? I just had them in my hand. Come on. Here they are in another battery box. Oops, 1, 2, slap them in there, 1, 2. Now, it's broad daylight right now, so I'm not going to give this a complete test, but I do want to turn it on. Oops. You can see the LEDs are lit up, and you can see it skitter. I'm going to back that camera off. LEDs are lit up because it's powering those both motors equally, it looks like. And it kind of ripples across the floor, across the workbench. Oops. Runs into things. Now, if I cover that one up, actually, I'm going to do something real quick because I know we don't have darkness right now, but I do have electrical tape, which is the equivalent of portable darkness. So I'm going to put a little patch of it, just for fun, to watch this thing go in a circle. I'm going to put this over one of the photodiodes, like so. Phototransistors. And then turn it on. And you can see that LED is lit up. And that LED, I hope you can see, I'm going to zoom in again. You can see that LED is lit up, that LED is not. So when light is impinging on the receiver, the LED will light up. Now let me back off again. Now we'll set this down and it should not go straight. As you can see, it's turning towards the light. If I switch the tape to the other side, it'll turn the other way. So that's basic operation. Later on, when it gets dark, I will try and lead it with a beam of light. So we'll get to that in a number of hours. But you won't notice, it'll be simply a cross dissolve. So we'll do a little more playing around with this guy. As you'll notice, the room is actually pretty bright, but the eyes aren't lit up and it's not moving. But when I take my phone with its little flashlight, now it'll follow it over here, it'll follow it over here, follow it all around. Because again, if it senses strong light on one sensor and not on the other. It uses differential power to the motors through the transistors to turn it. So that's pretty neat. You can play with that. Kid could play with that. So I think that's a good demo of that. And as you saw, it's pretty easy to put together. The only real challenge is, let me zoom in since I'm here. The only real challenge is getting these motors soldered in correctly. And again, if you have a youngster and you want the youngster to put it together because they really like playing with it, you're going to have to help them with soldering these motors in place so they're both even, because they can slip and slide pretty easily. But other than that, it's a real good kit. I wish it had a schematic, but you can look at the traces on the back of the board if you're familiar enough with electronics and see how everything's working. But other than that, it's a real good kit. And I hope you enjoyed the video.